It's time for us to tell our kids our stories and create some children's literature. Welcome to step 4 of gathering your stories to create children's literature. Okay, so today we're going to talk about building bridges and the importance of understanding how to build bridges literally in the literature form, but also building bridges between us and the generations that are yet to come. First of all, though, I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page at this point. So right now, you have already written your introductory chapter or your introductory paragraphs that tell who you were during the time period that you've chosen to write, what was going on in your life, who the important characters were in your life. You've also written the first chapter of your larger and bigger in context from the first grade until the 5th grade. So you've started in the first grade, and then you've gone ahead and you've at least started to write the last chapter, which would be, okay, now I'm in the 5th grade and this is how my life resolved at this point to a new normal in my life. So you've got your first chapter, your last chapter, and you've also started to write a few, maybe 2 or 3 shorter stories that you've stuck into the middle of this, like the pecans that are rising to the top of the pecan pie. So don't get discouraged if you're not that far, but that you can be that far if you have chosen to work along at a pretty steady pace. So now today we're going to talk about bridge building. Now there are 2 bridges that need to be built. There's the generational bridge and the literary bridge. Interesting, because there's an international cry that's going out. It's actually an international conference that is concerned, and there's a great concern growing about the generational disconnect between the generations that are older now and the younger generation. Across the world, it's getting worse and worse, that generational divide. And so it's up to us to begin to pass on the things that are deep in our hearts, the things we have learned, the way that we've survived, the way that we have grown. Pass that on to the next generation and begin to build that bridge between us and them. And so the 2 bridges we're working on as we're writing is the bridge between me and my grandchildren, my great-grandkids, my children, and the bridge between ideas within my work. So you've got the literary bridges we're also going to talk about. So generational bridges are created by a common soul of childhood or teenagehood, and we talked about that last week, and I want to go ahead and reiterate that to understand that what you're doing is incredibly valuable, because some things never change. Today's children have dreams and fears and joys and love and laughter and wonder, and they have curiosity and excitement and grief and pain, and these are parts of the things that we need to be writing. Don't forget to write how you were feeling as you were going through the events of your life. Now, because it is written for children, one of the reasons that I'm excited about what we're doing here at Tell the Kids is that we don't have to go to the really deep, dark places that sometimes our lives will take us. Remember your audience, but also go ahead and don't forget that we're writing to their soul from our soul. So now then, I think it's also very important that each one of us has, at some point in this process, begins to read it out to somebody, read aloud to a family member, a friend, or let someone else start reading it. It makes us very vulnerable because this is something maybe we haven't ever done before. But it's exciting to have someone else's interaction to say, ooh, that is amazing. I never heard that before. Ooh, I love the way you said this. And so don't be afraid at this point, especially, to start sharing with a group of friends or maybe with your son or your daughter and say, how do you think it's going? Because at this point, we all need a little bit of encouragement. And so I encourage you to begin to start sharing some of the things that you've written. Now, as we talk about the literary bridges that are very important as we're communicating through the written word, we need to have a constant bridge that's going over our long narrative into our short narratives. Now, our short narratives are going to have little bitty bridges between them. But in the long narrative, you need to remember where your resolution is coming. So I'm growing up and we're fixing to move to Texas somewhere down the road, and the character I'm writing about doesn't really know that. But sometimes dropping a seed in the writing that kind of foreshadows something that's yet to come is one good way to create some of those bridges. Also, you need to make sure that whenever we are going from chapter to chapter or from story to story, when we're sitting at the table at Thanksgiving, we just can pop into a new story. But as we're writing, we do need to be conscious of some literary bridges. And so the way that we can do that is we can use the last sentence of one story or the first sentence of the next story to kind of tie together an idea. It may just be one word. It may be an idea that's growing something that's going on, but make sure and kind of tie in, either foreshadow the next chapter or pick something up from the previous chapter in your first and last sentences of each story that you're telling. So whenever you are creating, don't be afraid to say, you know what, sometimes this is hard. It's okay. Even Jane Austen, she said, I'm not at all in the humor for writing. I must write, therefore, until I am. So even the greats, they have their frustrations with, oh my goodness, this is exhausting. But you know what? We have a great reason, and don't forget to reread that dedication page every day and remember why you're writing what you're writing. So in review really quickly, I want you to go ahead and make sure and read over your chapter and your middle chapter to test your voice. So whatever chapter, very first thing you started with, pick one of the random ones in the middle that you've begun to write, and make sure the voice of your character is still the same. Make sure that you're still presenting it from the same perspective. Don't forget to use dialogue. And also don't forget that when you do use dialogue, to avoid using the word said whenever you can. And then watch for opportunities for power words and do as much showing instead of just telling. So you guys have a great week and have a wonderful time. Start sharing your stories a little bit and it'll encourage you.